Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Project Elevate, and today I want to talk to you guys about shooting, give you some tips for kind of thinking about shooting that really may unlock the way the shooting mechanics work in NBA2K23. Obviously, a lot of us have adjusted, but a lot of us also had a hard time struggling. Some of you may be kind of still trying to adjust to the new shooting, and I think there are some key things you really need to think about before you can really unlock the shooting mechanics. Okay, so a lot of this is going to be centered on the shot timing release. So there are four options. There's very early, late, and very late. Now, chances are your mind is naturally going to be inclined to vibe with one of these settings. So this setting does not change your speed of shot at all. It changes what cue you're looking for in the shot in order to green your shot. And for all this video, we're going to be on Superstar, which is closest to online versus type of difficulty. All right, so once again, the shot timing release does not change the speed of the jumper. The jumper stays the same. It's just the cue that you're looking for that you need to time. So for late timing, which kind of vibes the most with my head, it's really about this point here that I'm looking at the cue. So I'm looking at the wrist. So this is the point right when the wrist starts to flick forward. You see that little motion where the wrist was kind of flat and now it starts to come forward. So for late timing, that's the cue that I'm looking for. I've found that it's pretty consistent among all shooters, regardless of upper release and stuff like that. Now, some players have a more natural release point, so that may factor in as far as who your favorite players are. But for me, that's when I think of shooting. When I think of shooting, when I think of the release of the ball, I think of that wrist flick as the point of like, okay, that's when I'm actually shooting the ball. You know, it's not the elbow part coming up. It's not the top of my jump. It's the wrist flick. So in my mind, to me, that's what kind of feels natural. So what I realized was, even though I could time it on early timing, it was an unnatural motion for me. I had to look for cues, but it didn't feel natural to me. Okay, and I want to touch on this real quick. Different types of shots have different timings, right? They have different animations that play out a little quicker or a little slower, whatever it may be. So moving shots, shots off the catch, contested shots, and shots with fatigue, they seem to be the biggest influencers of variation of timing. So this is kind of important to understand. All these factors that differentiate the shot speed, those actually affect the animation speed. So where shot timing as a setting doesn't affect the animation speed, it affects only the cue, these other factors in game actually affect the jump shot speed, the animation speed. So a contested jumper, much like in real life, you're going to try to get the ball off quicker, so it's a quicker animation. But the cues are still going to be the same. You're still going to look for the point in the animation where the wrist is starting to come forward in the case of late timing. As you get fatigued, your jump shot becomes slower. So the animation plays slower, but the cue remains the same. So you have to train yourself to look for the cue. So what this does is it kind of forces you to pay attention, to play in a kind of a zen state of mind all the time, a lot. So you're actually paying attention to the animation. Now, you will develop muscle memory and things will feel natural. That's why finding the timing that kind of vibes with your mind the most is going to be so important, and probably the key to your success of shooting in 2K23. All right, so let's work our way to very early, and then finally very late to kind of wrap this all up. All right, and to me, very early is the one that feels the most unnatural. It really took me a long time to figure out where the release point was, but I've kind of singled it into this point right here. So as you can see, the elbow moving up in the jump shot. So you have your start of the jumper, you have your gather. Now you have a point where the elbow reaches its maximum upward motion, right, you know, before you're getting to like your forearm kind of starting to move forward. So as soon as that hits that point, so you can see it hits that point, and then he starts his jump, and then at the point of the maximum jump is when the forearm starts to go forward. So there's a little bit of a gap there, right? So for me, that's the cue for very early timing, is at that point where the elbow stops moving upward, it reaches its maximum height. Okay, so this brings a point. Certain players feel more natural with different shot timings, so you kind of have to tailor that to like who your favorite players are, how it feels natural to you. Again, what feels natural to you is going to be the most important key to this whole thing. I'm going to keep repeating that topic because you got to get that through your head, but the release points are still the same. So what I found, and I haven't tested every single jump shot, but from what I found, the release points are kind of consistent. You got to break down the shot into different sections, so to speak. So this is gather, maximum point of elbow. You have a little bit of gap there, short gap, but gap between maximum point of elbow and the jump reaching its point. Zoom that out a little bit. So maximum point of elbow, a little bit of a jump, and then you have forearm extension, you have wrist flick. So start thinking about it like that. So again, the animation speed will change depending on how tired you are, how contested you are, if you're moving or whether you're standing still. So there are a lot of different shot timings you gotta look for, but the cues you're looking for are still gonna be consistent, you know? All right, so let's move on to early timing, which is where I started at, where a lot of people were suggested to start at. This was kind of like the meta. I think a lot of people are still on this. Some people gravitated to late. Okay, so for early timing, so hopefully you're getting the concept here. You're looking at for different cues. So with early timing, the point that I'm typically looking for is actually at the knees. So if you notice here on this animation, you have a point where the knees are bent, and then you have a point where they kind of extend and kind of almost, you see almost like a little bit of a snap to them, that extension, that almost hyperextension of the knee there. So that's the point that I'm looking for on early release timing. If you're looking at the arm part, what I'm looking for is the point where the forearm starts to move forward. So that's your release cue for early timing. But what I've found is that it's more consistent for me, especially online, to look at the legs and look at the knees straightening out like that. All right, so finally, let's take a look at very late, what that looks like. All right, so very late, it seems like it's pretty much there where the wrist has started to flick, and you're kind of right in the middle of between like the wrist flick and the release point of the ball. So very late can be okay if you're shooting a lot of fading jumpers and stuff like that, and you just kind of like to hold the ball until the very last second. I know with some Kobe Bryant jumpers, I always kind of thought in my head, like, man, like he's always like fading until waiting till the last second to release the ball. And I would shoot a lot of early, so something like this, late timing, kind of geared towards that mindset. When you think of the release point as like that last second that you're just about to release the ball. So as you can see, it's like right between wrist moving forward and like the release point of the ball. So again, the whole point I want to make with this video is that everybody's going to think of shooting a kind of a slightly different way. If you've shot the ball in real life, you know there's kind of a rhythm and a flow to it. And that's what they've kind of tried to emulate in 2K23. So you really have to kind of go through them, lab up a little bit, and just kind of feel shot release timing feels most natural to you, what kind of vibes with your brain. And that way you can just look at the cues. So to summarize everything, I want to summarize it like this. Shot release timing does not change the speed of the animation. It changes the cue that you're looking for in the jump shot. So you kind of have to break down the jump shot into a few different sections and look for those specific cues that are going to be consistent among most jump shot releases. In-game factors will change the speed of the animation you get. Some of those factors are catch and shoot versus off the dribble, fading, stuff like that, contested shots versus open shots, and then fatigue. So all those things will factor into the actual speed of the animation, but the cues will remain consistent. So where the cues come in the animation will come faster or quicker depending on the type of shot in game, contested, open, fading, moving, catch and shoot, etc. But if you focus in on the cues, then you're gonna be good across the board. And so hopefully this helps you guys wrap your head around shooting. I know it took me a little while to figure out, but I think I've really come to grips with what works for me. And sometimes something so simple as changing the shot timing speed in the settings will make all the difference in the world. Hope this helps. This is Project Elevate. Until next time, elevate your grind, game, yourselves, and each other. Peace.